It was a moment frozen in time. A velvet-lined drawer quietly slid open behind the heavy oak doors of Clarence's house. The scent of old wood and lavender lingered in the air. And then, there they were. A glint of royal blue caught the light. Catherine's fingers hovered, trembling, over the sapphire earrings. Diana's earrings. Her breath hitched. Next to them, the locket, a delicate gold chain, tucked neatly beside an envelope marked only with an ornate C. No one had seen these in years. Not since Diana. But they hadn't been lost, not really. They'd been hidden. And the question wasn't just why. It was who. Who had kept these from William? From Harry? From the world? And more importantly, what was Camilla planning to do with them? Catherine closed the drawer slowly, her face pale, her eyes glossy with disbelief. She wasn't supposed to find them. Not like this. Not now. This moment would change everything, not just for Catherine, but for the legacy of Diana herself. It was April 2025, a month still thick with grief and uneasy transition. Just 6 months after the passing of Queen Elizabeth II, the monarchy was shifting in quiet, careful steps. Behind palace walls, old doors were being opened, both literally and symbolically. In the name of legacy, in the name of duty, Catherine, now Princess of Wales, had taken on a delicate new responsibility, reviewing and cataloging the private royal archives, letters, heirlooms, trinkets, the personal and the precious, tucked away for decades. But there were places even Catherine hadn't been expected to go. And one of those places was Queen Camilla's personal vault. It was said to be a collection of jewels and items held in trust, inaccessible to most, even to the late Queen Elizabeth herself during certain times. Camilla, after years in the shadows, had risen, and with that rise came control over what was seen and what was not. So when Catherine entered that chamber, it wasn't to uncover secrets. It was to fulfill a duty. And yet, what she found was something no one had prepared her for. Among the tiaras and brooches, nestled behind a panel that clicked just slightly out of place, were the unmistakable pieces of Diana's private collection. Not the pieces the public had seen. Not the ones William had gifted to Catherine long ago. These were different, more intimate, more personal. The sapphire drop earrings Diana had worn in private dinners. The locket that once held tiny photographs of William and Harry as toddlers. Pieces that vanished from public knowledge after her death. Pieces her sons believed had been lost, or perhaps stolen. So how did they end up here? Hidden, tucked away under Camilla's care. Had Queen Elizabeth known? Had she approved it? Or was this something more sinister? Something quietly buried for 2 decades, only now surfacing in the cold, echoing corridors of Clarence's house? The past was no longer resting in peace. And Diana's memory, powerful, fragile, untouchable, was once again stirring. Before the tears, before the scandal, before the silence, there was a promise. In her final will, Diana made her intentions painfully clear. Her jewelry, the pieces that told the story of her life, were to go to her sons, and more specifically, to the women they would one day marry, so that they may one day share in the memories. Her handwritten note read, "It wasn't just about diamonds and gold. It was about love, legacy, continuity. But not everything made it to William and Harry. Some pieces, precious ones, seemed to vanish. The sapphire drop earrings, seen only a handful of times, most memorably in 1996 during her charity trip to Angola, gone. A delicate charm bracelet, gifted to her by Charles in 1982 with symbols for each royal duty, last seen on her wrist in a photograph from 1995, never seen again. The royal family had no answers, no records, only silence. And that silence only deepened when Camilla entered the frame. Once vilified as the other woman, Camilla's image was carefully reshaped by palace PR machines over 2 decades. From mistress to consort, from consort to queen. But no title could erase history. The public remembered the pain Diana had endured, the humiliation, the heartbreak. And with each step Camilla took toward the throne, Diana's memory became both louder and more fragile. There were rumors, Whispers. Items removed quietly from storage. Inventory logs mysteriously revised. The official line? Some pieces had been loaned. Others lost time. But royal watchers weren't convinced, especially when Diana's most iconic fashion moments were dissected and reimagined. The revenge dress, the emerald choker worn as a headband, the sapphire engagement ring now on Catherine's hand. Each item told a story. So, what are the items that disappeared? What are the ones that weren't supposed to be lost? And why? Now, in 2025, were they sitting hidden in Camilla's private vault? This wasn't just about jewelry. It was about erasure, about rewriting the past, or trying to. It started with a request. A simple one, or so it seemed. Catherine had been reviewing ceremonial archives for an upcoming royal exhibition. Some of Queen Elizabeth II's lesser-known artifacts were to be displayed in the palace's east wing, and for that, she needed access to select storage areas. A private assistant handed her a key, unmarked, polished, but old. Room 7, they whispered. Camilla's old quarters. The Queen said it was cleared. But it wasn't. The room was quiet. Too quiet. Heavy tapestries still hung on the walls. The scent of jasmine and rose lingered faintly in the air. Camilla's signature perfume. The light was low, filtered through thick velvet curtains. And in the far corner, a dresser. Antique, carved wood. One drawer stood out, darker, shinier, lined in red velvet and labeled with just one word, embossed in gold. Private. Catherine paused. Her hand hovered. She shouldn't open it. But something, instinct perhaps, pushed her forward. The drawer opened with a soft click. And inside, the first thing she saw was a blue. Sapphire, oval cut, framed in tiny diamonds. Diana's earrings. Not a replica, the earrings. Catherine's fingers trembled. Her breath hitched. Next to them lay a gold locket, delicate and worn. She opened it. Inside, 2 faded photographs. William on the left, no more than 3 years old. Harry on the right, his cheeks round and red. Tears welled up in her eyes. She knew this locket. Diana had worn it beneath her gowns during long royal tours. She once told a reporter it was her anchor. Then a diamond brooch. Catherine's hands moved instinctively, as if touching sacred relics. This brooch had last been seen on Diana in 1997, just months before her death. It had vanished from public view ever since. Catherine reached deeper. There, in a silk pouch, the Catherine stood alone in the dim light of the room. Her breath was shallow, not from fear, but from the weight of what she had just uncovered. The drawer stood open before her. The velvet shimmered in the lamplight, the gold letters spelling private, now feeling almost cruel. This wasn't just a drawer. It was a graveyard of secrets. Each piece inside told a story no one wanted to be heard. And now she had a choice. Walk away, say nothing, preserve the silence the monarchy depends on, or break the code and defend the memory of the woman who had been silenced for too long. Her hands were still shaking as she reached for her phone. She moved slowly, methodically. Each item was photographed, front and back, with care. The sapphire earrings, the gold locket, 2 tiny photos inside, one of William, the other of Harry, both barely older than toddlers. The diamond brooch, worn by Diana in 1997, days before a final trip to New York. The charm bracelet, unmistakable, with the initials WA etched into the last charm. And finally the tiara, wrapped in tissue faded with age. A thin gold crown Diana wore during a state dinner in France. Delicate, understated, powerful. Catherine held it in her hands for a moment longer. Then, gently, she laid it back into the drawer. She closed it slowly, locked it, slipped the small brass key into her pocket. Whatever happened next, these items would not disappear again. Later that evening, she made the call. Quiet, precise. Royal security was notified. No sirens, no confrontation. just a discreet arrangement for private transfer to a safer place, somewhere beyond reach. The next morning, palace aides noted a closed-door meeting between Catherine and the king. No record of what was said, no photographs, but whispers began to spread. The conversation was strained, emotional. Charles, caught between loyalty to the crown and the ghosts of his past. And then Camilla, no meeting, no apology, just a glance across the corridor. An icy, unreadable silence. And in that silence, a storm. Did she know? Had she hidden the items out of guilt? Out of fear that Diana's memory might overshadow her reign forever? Or was it something darker? A final act of control, a silent attempt to erase what came before her. We may never know. But what we do know is this. Catherine chose a side. Not the crown, not the institution. But Diana... IT didn't take long. A single whisper inside the palace became a storm outside of it. Word leaked. First to royal insiders, then to the ever-watchful eyes of the press. Unverified reports began to circulate. A private discovery, a vault, items belonging to the late Princess Diana suddenly unearthed. The palace said nothing, but the silence said everything. Behind closed doors, emotions were unraveling. William's reaction was, by all accounts, quiet but deeply personal. Those who saw him said he left a meeting early that day. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. For William, this wasn't just about his mother's jewelry. It was about betrayal. Another chapter of Diana's story hidden. Another truth kept from him. And then came the call from across the Atlantic. Harry's team, though now long distance from royal affairs, contacted the palace directly, demanding clarity, demanding to know how this had happened and why. But there were no answers, only shadows. The palace initiated a media blackout. No statements, no photographs, no confirmations. But the damage was already done. Speculation swirled, forums, podcasts, newspaper editorials. Some accused Camilla, others defended her. Theories spread like wildfire. The items had been misplaced or held for safekeeping, or perhaps even forgotten. But no one truly believed that, because what came next happened quietly, without announcement. Over the following weeks, the missing items were returned, piece by piece, not to a museum, not to an archive, but to their rightful heirs, William, and, through private arrangements, Harry. There were no cameras, no headlines, only a soft shifting of power as Diana's legacy, once buried, found its way home. And then the world saw it. At a royal engagement in late June, Catherine stepped out of the black Range Rover at a children's hospice in Surrey. A blue dress, simple, elegant, but it was her earrings that stole the world's breath. Sapphire drops, Diana's. For the first time in nearly 3 decades, they glistened in daylight. It wasn't a statement. It wasn't defiance. It was remembrance. And yet, it reignited everything. Front pages ran side by sides of Diana in Angola and Catherine in Surrey. Social media erupted with emotion, fury, heartbreak. The crown had tried to stay silent, but now the people were speaking. What had been hidden? Why had it taken Catherine to make it right? The monarchy, once again, tried to steer the narrative. Quiet press briefings, carefully planted stories about honoring Diana's wishes. In the grand halls of Buckingham Palace, where portraits line the walls and whispers of the past echo through marble floors, not every legacy is carved in stone. Some are tucked away, quietly, deliberately, inside a velvet drawer. A bracelet, a pair of earrings, a single photograph sealed in gold. Catherine didn't shout. She didn't rage. She didn't expose or accuse. She simply acted with grace, with quiet strength. And perhaps that was her greatest act of all. In choosing to protect Diana's memory, not weaponize it, she gave a kind of closure no headline ever could. Not just to William, not just to Harry, but to us, To everyone who watched Diana walk through fire with a smile on her face, who saw her light flicker and fade, and still hoped it might somehow live on. And now it does. Not in the gold or the sapphires, but in the choice to remember. They were never lost, Catherine is said to have whispered to a close aide, just waiting to be found. But the discovery of those heirlooms raises a far deeper question, one the public has only just begun to ask. If these treasures could be hidden for nearly 30 years, what else lies buried beneath the velvet and protocol of the royal institution? What truths have been folded into tissue paper and tucked behind gold-plated locks? Not every royal secret has jewels attached. Some carry grief, some guilt, and some, the most powerful ones, are just memories someone tried to forget. But history has a way of resurfacing. And when it does, it often arrives not with scandal, but with a sigh, a moment of stillness, a woman standing in a dark room, holding a locket between trembling fingers, feeling the weight of it all. Sometimes the future doesn't begin with a coronation. It begins with a drawer and the courage to open it